Hi, welcome to the THC show with Neil, where we attempt to educate, stimulate, and motivate by exposing the truth, which in many cases is not pretty, but we try to provide some hope and some mechanisms for change with that. On the show today, we have Jeremiah Vandermeer as our guest. Very pleased to announce that. We're also going to share the 420 moment with Glenn Wells and the landlord today, and Jerry Martin is here for the Martin Medical Moment. Well, the truth is that in this so-called free country, we are far from free. Being free is having the right to do or not do whatever you choose to do or not do, unless you're harming somebody else. Along with freedom comes the responsibility to not only do no harm, but to stop other people from doing harm if you can. These are natural rights and responsibilities, and freedom is a natural right, not bestowed on us by anybody, but a right that we have, that we obtain by being brought to this planet and surviving the early stages. When you arrive here as a baby, you are helpless and not free. Nature has provided that there are parents, guardians, that hopefully care about you and love you, that know more than you, and help you with all of that up to a point. But when you get to that point where you're now a free-thinking adult and you decide to have that conversation, I'm not sure what the age is, it's different for different people, but there comes a point in everyone's life where they say thank you to their parents or guardians. I appreciate your values and what you tried to do for me, but I don't share all of your values, and I'm going to go live my own life now. And at that point, nobody else ever gets to tell you have to do stuff you don't want to do, or that you can't do what you want, unless you're harming other people. It doesn't matter whether they're a king or a queen, a dictator, a tyrant, or in our country, a free servant. It just doesn't matter. Nobody ever has the right to do that. You get to make your own decisions. And whenever they're doing that, and they do that a lot, kings and queens do that, dictators and tyrants do that, and unfortunately public servants in free countries also do that. But it's never right. And it's always an infringement and a violation of your natural rights. In this country, we're supposed to have freedom, and our forefathers had the courage to fight and die for that, to stand in trenches, to take bullets. And it's very disrespectful that we've allowed things to get to where we are, because as I stated at the beginning, we are far from free. One of the best examples of us not being free here is drug prohibition, and especially the attempt to prohibit cannabis. Anyone who looks into it knows that cannabis is one of the safest and most beneficial plants found in nature. And we have been lied to for decades about this, but anyone who doesn't really know must be very confused. Is it a dangerous drug that threatens the very fabric of society to the point that we need to use the criminal law and millions and billions of tax resources to combat it? Or is it a life-saving medicine, a medicinal herb, a healthy vegetable, a source of fuel, fiber, building materials, plastics, and a myriad of other applications? What is it? What it is a tool for truth. It's a way to find out whether or not you're free. It's the most glaring and obvious example of us not being free. It's a way to know how your public servants are doing their job and whether or not they care about you or not. And it seems like you're just chattel and we're to be controlled and exploited by the powerful elite. And unfortunately, I'm sorry to tell you that seems to be the truth. One need only look at how so-called legalization of this long-maligned miracle plant is being rolled out. Who's benefiting? Who's being thrown under the bus for those profits? To understand the truth about whether cannabis is a dangerous drug or an amazing medicinal herb, you need only to Google the endocannabinoid system. Cannabis in nature mimics what our bodies create in our endogenous or interior or endocannabinoid system. They named it that because when they tried to determine that cannabis had no medical value, which it says in the United States schedule of drugs, where cannabis is Schedule 1 and has no medicinal value and is extremely dangerous according to them. But that same chemistry that is cannabis is chemistry that our body creates to help us with all sorts of issues. What the endocannabinoid system does, if you Google it, you'll find this out, that it is the one that moderates and overlooks all the other systems in not just the human body, but all of the vertebrates on the planet. They all have an endocannabinoid system. It maintains homeostasis where things get out of balance. It creates cannabinoids that are anti-inflammatories when we get trauma and inflammation going on. Cannabinoids that mimic analgesics that cure pain or help us with pain. All of these different things that cannabis is good for. So for your government to tell you that you can't have cannabis and that it's a crime to have that is a complete oxymoron. It makes absolutely zero sense. It cannot be the case. But instead, the government, in an attempt to control people and to keep cannabis out of the marketplace, has made it a crime with huge penalties. There's so many people incarcerated in the United States, and even here in Canada, we have people in cages for cannabis offenses. And really, cannabis and criminality should never be uttered in the same sentence. It shouldn't even be in the same paragraph. It has nowhere to be placed in the criminal code. This is an abomination of what should be happening in especially a free country. It is a complete undermining of our justice system, and is why we rail the way that we do against cannabis prohibition. In fact, what they're doing with cannabis prohibition and now with legalization is they're literally running a protection racket for the legal drugs. And here in the case of cannabis legalization, or so-called legalization, they've divided the cannabis into two groups, the legal cannabis and the illegal cannabis. And they're still using the criminal law and increased money for enforcement to try to wipe out the now illegal cannabis to protect the government interests with their legal cannabis. And this is just absolutely abhorrent in a free society. This should not be going on. Governments have a role to play with respect to regulations. When things are proven to be harmful, then usually at the point of sale, regulations can be put on things to protect the public from the harms that can occur. Those regulations need to be as minimal as possible. You're always balancing human rights with these regulations when you're telling people they can't have access to things in absolute unlimited ways. And most things don't require much in the way of regulations. Most of the things that cause us problems, we can mitigate those problems with regulations requiring education at the point of sale. So if there's a little label on the warning, or a warning on the label that tells you what the parameters of this particular item are, that's pretty much all we need. People are not trying to harm themselves, they're trying to use things effectively, and a little bit of guidance is necessary with some things, and that's pretty much where regulations should end. But there are some things that are even more dangerous, that have a higher potential for harm and death, and those things, more regulations are warranted. Those regulations come in all different types of forms. The government can get creative about the way they do that, but there can be advertising restrictions and age restrictions and quality and quantity restrictions and all of those types of things. But whenever those regulations get to a point where the underground market is going to kick in and take over, then those regulations have to be scaled back, because that needs to be the mandate of the regulators, is to not allow for an underground market, especially for the things where there is inherent danger involved. The more dangerous an item is, the more you don't want to hand that over to the underground market, because there's no regulations there and no protections for people, and that's why we have to have regulations that make sense and don't allow for an underground market, because the underground market is very dangerous in how that's all rolled out. So if we were free in our country, we wouldn't be having these regulations that they're putting on cannabis, for example. That's why we can use cannabis as an example to expose what they're doing in the way of not allowing us the proper access. In fact, what they're doing in denying proper access to cannabis is causing death. And there needs to be some recourse for that, because our public servants are completely out of control. And we'll find out a little more later on in the show exactly how out of control they are with respect to the cannabis so-called legalization. But if they cared about us, then they would admit to the lies that have been told about cannabis for all these decades, because reefer madness was a real thing and still is, and they're still lying about the effects on the developing brain, for example, or how it impairs people and all of those types of things. We're still dealing with a lot of reefer madness and a lot of lies. And if our government cared about us, they'd come out and admit to that and apologize for that. And then they would help Canadians to obtain and use cannabis in all of its different forms. And instead of what they're doing is they're trying to regulate it to the point where it's some sort of a dangerous item that they don't really want to have anybody talk about in ways that are positive, and they don't want anybody to use in ways other than just once in a while recreationally, and that's why the price is so high and it's so far out of reach in these so-called government stores. But the truth is that legalization is not for us. It's not for the people and the Canadians. It's for the government's insiders, the corporate friends, and those kinds of people. So if our government were not corrupt, then they would not be using fear and lies to put profits ahead of patients with respect to cannabis, that's for sure. And especially the poor and sick and suffering Canadians who need cannabis the most and are really completely being denied of this. Because the government legalization does not involve the ability to access high-dose edibles or good quality cannabis at affordable prices. So the poor Canadians are out of luck. The sick and suffering Canadians are out of luck. And many of them are going to die because of it. And that's why I say that it's a lack of access causing death with respect to how they're rolling out so-called legalization. They would recognize that high-dose edibles are what is required to combat the overdose crisis. And they'd make sure that they were accessible everywhere. And we're also going to explore on this show how we can have that happen despite the Cannabis Act and the federal government's attempt to eliminate the medical cannabis dispensaries, which they so far have done a pretty good job of, but it's not over yet. And we think we can come back with a vengeance the way that we should to help our brothers and sisters that really need access to that. So it seems very clear that our government is corrupt, and that the corruption runs very deep, and that hopefully we can use what they're trying to do with controlling our lives with respect to access to cannabis to expose all of that and maybe solve some of our other issues in society which are also going on because of corruption and abuse of power by our public servants who really think they own our asses. So I guess that's my rant for the day. I don't think I've nailed a rant properly yet. I do it just fine out in public when I'm talking to people, but doing it in front of a camera has never quite been my forte. But I'll keep trying week after week, and one of these days, I maybe inspire you a little bit with what I'm talking about in our rant section. So what we're going to move to now is the news and what's going on in some of the things in the cannabis world. And I will say that breaking news, the CBC is reporting that there's been a robbery of large quantities of cannabis from a legal grow in North Fork farm, in a North Fork farm in Ontario. They're not disclosing at this point whether that would be an LP or whether that would be a medical user whose facility has been robbed. But apparently there's been a large robbery just happened today. We just got news of that about an hour before this show. So more on that as it comes. In the USA, Illinois has become the 11th state to legalize adult use cannabis. And that's pretty significant, adult use cannabis in 11 states. I'm not sure how the federal government can continue with a Schedule 1 for that. I mean, there's so many more states than that, well over 20, more states than that have medical cannabis. So there's a lot of push in the United States to change the scheduling and to allow cannabis to be used there. However, the DEA is also reporting that they spent $18 million last year eradicating illegal grows, which is more than they spent in the entire year on all domestic terrorism that they're facing. So they seem to feel that cannabis is still a huge threat, and they're still pumping lots of taxpayer dollars into trying to eradicate that which is not a threat and is actually medicine for anybody that gets a hold of it. So shame on the home of the brave and land of the free for continuing to not respect the sovereignty of their citizens and what freedom actually means down there, but at least there is some push. There's also a woman coming from Vancouver down into the States that had a vial of CBD oil, and she's been banned from the US for life and given a $500 fine for that, because I guess CBD oil is also seen as a major threat still to the US government. And I mean, this has got to stop. As things progress, there's going to be a lot more of this. There's going to be a lot of people that are caught with some amounts of cannabis and barred for life, and eventually there will be enough of an uproar about it that I imagine that'll change as well. There's also pardons happening in the States where criminal records are being expunged in many of the states that are coming up with legalization, and we're waiting to see if that's going to happen properly here in Canada. So far, not in any significant way that is really going to protect people from past records that shouldn't have ever been in the first place. All of those records should be completely set aside and no record of them in the future. But we'll see how that works out. CBD, by the way, is also now being reported to stop the metastasizing of breast cancer. That's how dangerous that is. 1 in 8 women, by the way, will develop breast cancer, invasive breast cancer during their lifetime. It's an extremely serious disease amongst women in the world. And those women who smoke cigarettes are much more likely to develop breast cancer. So please keep that in mind when you're deciding whether or not you want to inhale certain vapors. But CBD can stop the metastasizing of breast cancer, and that's a really positive news there. And let's hope they stop criminalizing people for having that. Here in BC, low sales are really concerning the shareholders of legal weed. They're down about $100 million from where they figured that they would be. Unlike Alberta, who's doing very well. In fact, the $100 million is how far we're behind Alberta on this. And I think we've got about a dozen legal stores in all of British Columbia, and they've got close to 300 legal stores going on in Alberta. But friends don't let friends buy LP weed. Even if you're in Alberta, come on, grow your own. You know, underground cannabis is the way to go. We just don't want to support the government system until they change it and get it right. And if we change it properly, then they will have to get it right. And then we can go buy their weed, and we'll be happy to do that. And our friends will be working there, and our growers will be growing for them. And we won't have to worry about the overspraying and overdrying and overpackaging and overpricing and all that stuff. And worst of all, money being used to continue to criminalize other people that are threatening their little monopoly. So that's not good at all. We mentioned it earlier, there's no provision within the legal system for medical cannabis, for high-dose edibles, for low-cost, good-quality flowers and concentrates. And we're going to discuss on this show, as we have been since the beginning when I started this, and we're going to continue on this theme of exploring how we can make that happen, and we can. And how we're going to do that. And I really feel bad for those investors that sunk their money into LP stocks, but they're going to have to lower their prices by about maybe 400% or 500%. And they're not going to be able to compete with the stores that are going to be there for the people that really need it, that can't afford all that government weed so far. And that's just the way that is. So, yeah, we're getting close to the 420 moment. I've got a couple of friends with me here. Glenn is in his regular spot. And today we got the landlord with us. The landlord has been an activist and a resident and, resident. Forever. That's why he's the landlord.
That's why he's the landlord.
But for as long as I've been around, he's been around. So welcome, you guys.
Welcome.
Great
Thank
to
you.
see you.
Thank you. Nice to see you again. Don't forget your mic this week.
Yeah, let's do that.
There's your little ring.
There's the 419 warning anyway.
Yeah, there you go.
So we need a little warning ahead of time. I think the 420 moment actually is about a 10-minute event, maybe not 9 minutes and 59 seconds.
There we
it's
go.
420 something. It's 420 in my opinion, and
it's
you need 10 minutes.
420 with me, man.
Yeah, it's been 420 all my life.
45 years in smoking, man.
Yeah, eh?
Yeah,
so what are you smoking right now there, guys?
Today I'm smoking some pineapple chunk.
Pineapple chunk.
Yes,
shatter in there too.
And it's got a little bit of shatter in there too, yeah.
So would you call that an indica or a sativa?
It's an indica. Yeah, you can look it up on Leafly. It's a very strong indica.
I see.
Yes.
Well, you're on
the
couch
microphone,
already.
man. You gotta light it up.
We're almost at 420.
Yeah, we're almost at 420.
We're almost at
5
420.
seconds to go.
That's
Probably
landlord
25
standard
seconds
time.
Right.
We try to be punctual.
Happy 420.
Happy 420.
There
it is.
He lit one. Okay, so now sending smoke signals to one another. This is the native way.
The old cell way.
Landlord sending greetings to all. Blessings.
It's such a social commodity, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean,
and what happens is you sit around with your friends, you tell good stories, or you can learn something from your friend while you're smoking.
Or people you don't even know. You know, at 420 comes along, and you're standing by the bus stop there, you step aside a little bit to not bother anybody, you light up the joint, but two people look over and go, hey, you know, and you go, walk on over, and there you go. You know,
when
you
it
made
was
friends.
illegal, people used to walk by and go, it must be nice.
Yeah.
Hey, man, I walk down there.
Or you get on the bus and they go, wow, you smell good.
I mean, this is the good stuff.
Yeah.
You know, you're smoking the good stuff.
Yeah, I didn't irradiate this before I brought it here. You know.
Well, no, but I mean, with respect to the other things that people are smoking besides even LP weed. You know, as
like
far as
crack,
tobacco, this is the good stuff. Everybody in public knows it's the good stuff except the carbs.
Yeah.
The cops, they think it's the best. We talked about it last week. You're standing around with some friends, and the cops all of a sudden show up, and now you're trying to, convince the cops that you were smoking the poisonous killer tobacco.
Yeah. So,
no, it's okay, officer.
I used to play on that too because the smell of cigarettes would be always more overpowering than a smell of weed. So I think that's probably why I used to smoke a cigarette right after a joint,
right,
sort of to cover the smell on my body.
Cigarette smokers have that advantage.
Oh yeah, it's really strong. Like when you don't smoke and you smell somebody who smokes, it's like walking into a wall of smoke.
All my smoker friends throughout my life, whenever we were in a situation where they didn't want to have to be smelling a weed, they'd just light up a cigarette right away afterwards. Me, I'm rolling the window down and sticking my head out and stuff, and, trying other things.
Oh yeah. There you go, sir.
Thank you.
There you go.
There you go.
You want to try that?
You should put a Neil into this 420 moment.
Of course.
Without
a Neil, we wouldn't be here.
And Neil is so awesome. I don't thank him enough.
Cameras,
I'd still
talking
be here, man.
Well, yeah, you'd be down the street or something.
Spirit, I can get that going real good, man. When you smoke a couple joints, you know what I mean?
Neil runs all the shows on Pot TV. Awesome.
Neil's a real good man.
Yeah.
If I was to have a bro, he'd be one of them.
Yeah.
My bald-headed bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who'd be another bro?
Well, what was your name again?
Glenn.
Glenn, he came up and said, "Hey, landlord." I don't know who the hell this guy is. Well, we met before.
See what happens at 420?
I remember the weed, but I don't remember you, right?
Yeah, we've seen each other.
There used to be a thing called the contest at at the Cannabis Culture on Pot TV.
Yep.
And a few of the heavyweights would sit around with their own vehicle for smoking cannabis.
Yeah.
And people would send in weed.
Yeah.
And they would sample it, and you could win a volcano vaporizer at the end of it.
Okay.
And it was amazing to watch.
Yeah.
Because they'd decide on, this time we're going to try this sample, and they'd show it to the camera, and they'd put it under the microscope, and they'd break it up, and they'd smell it.
It's kind of what I do in the mornings on my broadcast when I do it. People send me shatters and butters, and I get to test it on my live.
I didn't even mention
my way, man.
Yeah.
I didn't even mention Glenn from Canamatch.ca.
Thank you very much.
About
that.
And you got a show that you do as well?
Yeah, I do a little morning broadcast usually a couple of times a week.
Where do they find out?
On Glenn Wells on Facebook. Just look up Glenn Wells on public.
Right, help me
I've got about 4,000 followers right now.
Nice.
So yeah.
Okay.
You can also look at 8 out of 10 Glenn. Because I got 8 fingers, yeah. Thank you, Al the Alchemist, for that very much. I have carried that on. Yes.
What's that website again?
Canamatch.ca. And right now, until the end of September, we're giving 10,000 credits to all the ladies who sign up, and it only costs you 5 credits to send a message. So you're gonna make some new 420 friends or fall in love with somebody. Jerry Martin's on there. There you go, Jerry Martin's on.
I just want some of the samples. That's all.
Well, I had to work for those, landlord, just like you had to work for the name of landlord, I guess.
I live in this neighborhood since 1976.
Yeah, I have only been here since 1981.
So much of this stuff.
So.
And you work with the High Guys.
Yep, I work with High Guys Distillate. They've won 2 cups. First place here in Vancouver at the old Kush Cup.
Right.
And he's also won second place at Prairie Medicinal Harvest Cup that's run by Jeffrey Lumstrom.
Nice.
And
coming up
I do believe we're
November.
going back again in November for the new one.
We'll talk about that later on in the show.
Oh, that's great. I love Jeffrey.
Cool. So what do the High Guys do essentially? They have a website or something?
No, they're we're just word of mouth right now. I think they tried to get a website up, but they had a problem. But mostly it's me. I'm their online rep. The owner's pretty quiet about himself and stuff like that. So I've been their front man, and I've known the owner for 20 years. We've grown up together. We've driven across Canada to Toronto and back in a car together and stuff like that. So like really tight friends. And
nice.
I started being popular online, and I said to him, "Hey, let's bring out High Guys," and I
and they take part in the Cannabis Cups and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
so,
yeah.
Awesome.
And they're always at.
I wanted to say
they're always at 420. We always get a booth. Last year we had a booth, and before we've had to have free booths, but this year we actually were able to buy a booth, which was really good.
Nice. That was an epic 420. I don't know.
Oh! I wish we could do it again. Like it's going to be 420 all month long next year.
There's
yeah, because it's 420,
every day.
Yeah,
2020. Yeah.
At 420. On 420.
Yeah.
AM or PM?
There's 4 420s.
Yes, if you're going across the country.
Could be
No, because it's April 20th,
Yes.
1920.
Yes. And, you mean 2020? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Snoop
420.
Dogg was on
20th day of
Facebook
2020.
holding up a sign saying showing how that was.
Wow.
That's good. That's as high as I can count.
And you know, I'm not going to say that, but that was Jody's line because she said that up on the stage is going to be 420 all month long. So
Yeah.
I know. I don't
Well,
wanna,
we're hoping that we'll have a whole bunch of events
that'd
next
be
April.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
And and a 420. I don't know if we're ever going to
And
match
hopefully a big
last
name,
year's
a big
420.
name will come and do another
But
concert. and
we're going to talk a bit about that on the show as well. Whether we can do that. So.
that'd be
Cool.
great.
Get Snoop Dogg.
I wanted to mention, the contest that they had here at Pot TV many years
Yes.
ago when they would smoke that weed that was sent into them. It was interesting to watch because as they started to consume it, it takes 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, and the conversation just gets animated, gets elevated, gets much. The cheekbones go up. It was like you could watch it. I was there watching it every week, and it was amazing just to see how the mood
effect
changed.
goes,
by the cannabis that was smoked there.
Yeah, and just like here.
How do you like my little toker there?
I
eh?
love this thing. I got one at home.
Do you? Yeah, they're awesome.
It's Gibby who makes this.
Gibby makes that.
Yes,
Gibson
I have
Glass.
one
I
at
think
home.
that's the only place you can get them is
Yeah,
Gibson
and you're
Glass.
supposed to, if you got one, you go on Instagram using it or then post a picture or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Apparently that's why I think.
I got Tommy Chong to take a pull off it, and we put that picture up on a Pot TV show. But now Gibson says he can't find that
Tommy.
particular
I did a movie with Tommy
particular
Chong.
show. So we're
Tommy's
going
my hero, man.
figure out what show that
I
was.
get his age, man, smoking weed. I'll be like,
I did a movie.
Right.
I did a movie with Tommy Chong.
Nice.
Yeah, it
You
never
did a
never
movie
made it
with
onto
him,
the
man?
screen because of the production company had a problem. But it was called Best Buds, and it was filmed at Riverview, the psychiatric hospital.
Wow.
That's when they let you out?
We were using the old abandoned buildings there, and the scene was I'm sitting at a desk, and it's supposed to be immigration, and Tommy is standing at the counter there, and he doesn't have ID on him, and they're trying to drill him and say, who are you, and he turns around and he says, don't you know who I am? And he shows the Cheech and Chong thing on the back of his jean jacket and stuff like that, and you got to be sitting there looking at this guy, right? It was great, but apparently they never got onto the
that's
screen.
too bad.
Was the
let me
problem.
shake your hand, man.
Oh, yeah, it
You
was-
met
it's like-
Tommy Chong?
I did, and we had dinner with him, and we also smoked joints with him.
Right.
Because
He's awesome. I've met him a
when
couple
you're
times,
When
and
you're
I think he's awesome.
an extra, he didn't get paid, or it was a volunteer extra, right? But we did get to eat with him, and did get to smoke.
Well, did you
with
smoke?
him.
Yeah, smoked weed with him.
Of course.
Of course.
Oh,
What's
yes.
this guy's name again? He's cool.
That's
Glenn
Glenn
Wells.
Wells. All right, well, that's our 420 moment.
Yeah.
Great to have you guys on. We'll repeat this
Keep
regularly
on
as we
See you
go.
next
smoking,
week,
man.
yeah.
Peace out.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Great
Thank
stuff.
you.
All right, and Neil, I think we have a video coming up here. Seems to me.
Does a whole lot. Last year they were the recipient of the donations for the putting challenge, which you can still do over there at the Cannabis Substitution Project. Happy to call to the stage, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Neil Magnuson.
Hey, thank you very much. Really happy to be here again. This is such an awesome event. I want to thank the Cannabis Growers of Canada for putting this on, and all the people and all the work they do, Tanya and all those. Are just fantastic to continue this event. This is such a great event. It's completely illegal, of course. We're still fighting these bastards that want to control our market, and huge penalties for opening a dispensary or trying to sell outside the system, etc., etc. And I just want to say that the words criminal code and cannabis plant should never be used in the same paragraph, that there should be no penalties for pot of any sort. It's the most wonderful of plants that Mother Nature has provided us with. And yeah, we're getting close. We're going to try to wrap this up right at 4:20 so that when I finish singing you can light them if you got them, and I'm sure we all got them. But yeah, we're not supporting the government system. We need access to proper cannabis, high-dose edibles, and low-cost, good-quality flowers. I want to thank the organizers for raising money for the OPS, and last year for our organization, the CPS, the Cannabis Substitution Project, CSP. And we're at the forefront of fighting for this kind of access. So thanks for being here. Have as much fun as you can. I don't think it gets much better than this.
For access is kind of what it's all about here, and on this show too, we're going to be talking a lot for a long time until they get it right about how they have no provision for people that are needing cannabis for medical purposes, and the whole government program is by their own definition non-medical. One of the main fronts coming up is the constitutional challenge that's being run by Jerry Martin and on his behalf with his lawyer Paul Lewin. Jerry Martin was a dispensary owner in Whitewood, California. Whitewood, Saskatchewan, and he ran this dispensary for 4 years there, and it's a town of about 1,000 people. And Jerry saw a need there. They're in a very remote place. And he's a very emotional and compassionate guy, and he was responding to the needs of his community when he decided to join many other people across Canada at that time and open up a medical cannabis dispensary. He did it as by the book as you could, with requiring a doctor's confirmation of diagnosis. And with a town of about 1,000 people, after 4 years, he had about 1,000 members. Unfortunately, it was illegal to have a cannabis dispensary, although Jerry became known as the King of Compassion with the donations that he gave to his community and to the activist community, but mostly to the community of Whitewood. There's a long list of projects that he funded, and sending kids to camp and many other things that he did there with some of the proceeds from his medicinal cannabis dispensary. Jerry was hoping that the way things were going and the way things were looking, there was going to be inclusion of this vibrant, well-entrenched community of dispensaries across Canada. The needs of the sick and suffering Canadians had been being served by, in Vancouver, about 150 different dispensaries, and others in many other places across Canada. And Jerry wanted to be part of that, and believed that the way things were going, that he would be licensed and included in the new legalization, and he would be able to continue helping the people the way that he had. But the government didn't see it that way, and Health Canada didn't see it that way. And Jerry got a letter telling him to stop doing what he was doing. Well, it was just another in a bunch of threats that happened to people running dispensaries during the course of their time doing that. Depending on what happens in other places, other dispensaries get closed down. Many times as a dispensary owner, you're worried that you're next. And so I'm sure that Jerry had a lot of that going on for the 4 years that he was operating his dispensary, the ups and downs of wondering whether or not you're going to be allowed into a legal system or whether you're going to be raided and shut down, as was happening. But he got a letter from Health Canada, and he decided that he had to continue helping people the way that he had been, and that maybe he could get the letter to go away somehow, or that sanity would prevail, or that legalization would happen before they moved against him. But the truth of it is that you can't stop helping people in a situation like that, especially if you're an emotional and compassionate guy. But any dispensary owner I've ever met, even the ones that started out as just doing it for money, before very long, they're also doing it for their clientele, and they're recognizing that people's needs are great, and they want to continue helping those people. And the thought of not being able to help these people was not something that Jerry could consider. I mean, it really wasn't in the realm of possibilities for him. Many of these people were close friends and people that lived in the community. It's a very small community. And so he had to keep selling. He's not going to turn away the people that are sick and suffering and tell them, I'm sorry, but I can't help you get cannabis because the government says so. Well, the government had been saying so forever, and he was illegal since the beginning. And it's just not something that you can do. So he continued to sell cannabis and help people, strictly with doctor's supervision and all the things that he thought were doing it the right way to satisfy the law and the people that would otherwise interfere. But sure enough, RCMP showed up at his shop one day and put him in handcuffs and took him away and went to his house and ransacked it and seized his cars and seized about $650,000 worth of assets that Jerry had. Jerry also had other businesses. He had a tattoo store within Whitewood. He has a resort where he helps people get off of hard drugs in a foreign country. And they've just devastated him in what they've done. Being an emotional guy, the torment of suffering what he feels will be a long prison sentence, and that's what they're telling him, of losing all of his stuff, has taken a big toll on Jerry. So that's one of the big fights that we've got going on right now, as he moves forward on a constitutional challenge to follow in the steps of Judge Phelan in the Allard decision, where he declared that the storefront dispensaries are at the heart of access for the sick and suffering Canadians using cannabis for medical purposes. And so we're going to follow Jerry and his fight as he heads towards that court date, not to be established yet, but sometime next spring is what we're thinking. And Jerry's with me today. And we're going to talk about some particular aspects of his particular case. So how you doing, Jerry?
I'm doing good today. Yeah, how are you?
Oh, doing good. Doing good too.
Good.
Show number 4, so I'm kind of pumped about that.
Rolling along.
3 was a milestone, so maybe it gets easier from here. I'm not sure. So what did you want to talk about today with respect to your case?
I don't know. I was thinking Lois down there talking about reasonable access, because I think that's what it's always been about.
It is
reasonable access for medical use. Not ordering it online, not having to get something sight on scene, the details.
Some people can do that, some people want to do that, but there's many that can't and don't want to. And the access, as you're mentioning, has been just devastated by this so-called legalization. So many people have nowhere to go now.
This week alone, just on the island, they're really taking out a lot of people.
There's dispensaries that are being raided. I think the number is at 537 raids now. But there's a whole bunch of others that didn't get raided, but they've closed down because of threats that happened as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So the access is really hard for people, and I'm not sure.
And the products, there's no products. They're limited on their products. Their new edibles are 10 milligram. That's great for a senior or somebody starting out. I mean, but in all reality, they're just looking at money.
Not going to help the medical users, and more importantly, I guess, not more importantly, but also of equal importance, is it's not going to help the people that are wanting to use cannabis edibles in place of the hard drugs with an opioid crisis going on.
Well, that's it.
So
we need something much stronger for that.
There needs to be a pushback with that, because the government's legalization has eliminated the access through medical dispensaries, and I think that's unconstitutional. And I think that we can actually combat that, and the city of Vancouver has taken a step towards that. I think you're probably aware that they passed a motion.
I watched the whole thing,
So that's really powerful and important, what's happened there. And for those who don't know, there's been cannabis being dispensed in the downtown east side in the Hastings area by the Cannabis Substitution Project for 2.5 years, and by the High Hope Society for almost an equal amount of time. And because of that, the new council has decided to reverse the original decision by Robertson's council, which was to make that area an exclusion zone where no cannabis could be dispensed, and instead allow cannabis to be dispensed in that area, but not just cannabis to be dispensed, but to actually specifically target the opioid overdose crisis. Which is very powerful, because the only way to do that with cannabis is with high-dose edibles and with low-cost, good quality flowers and concentrates.
Yeah, that was a unanimous decision too. And I seen the mayor come in late, and he made very certain that he said he was on board with that, and that was really great to see. Because we were a little
right, and powerful because Coastal Health was there highly recommending against allowing that. So that was a big statement by the city of Vancouver. And what we've learned since then from Dana Larson and subsequently Rob Laurie on this show is that the city has the power to allow and license things that are against the criminal code and against the policies of the federal government, to address things that happen in their cities that require urgent response. And in this case, that's what that is.
I agree.
So we're looking now to move quickly and act upon that green light that's been given to have that happen. And that's where we're going to have high-dose edibles at affordable prices, and low-cost, good-quality flowers and concentrates available to anybody. It won't be just a medical model. We can't do that. It can't be that. Because people that are using those hard drugs and want to get off them, there can't be barriers.
Well,
to
they don't
doing
have a
that.
home to get a license in or to have anything mailed to in the first place. So that's another one of the problems we have with the current system.
They can't be going to their doctor and tell them, because many of them will not go to their doctor and tell them. So they're not going to get a doctor on board.
Well, they're afraid of losing their opiates.
They need to be able to, as easily as possible, go into a storefront that can help them do that. So that's what's going to
proper education.
Of course, and that's what that storefront would be about. And that's what we talked about just a little while ago on the show, is how regulations are usually in the form of education, and that's all that's really needed.
But in this case, they're in the form of not knowing how to. They don't have to know anything. In fact, they've outlawed it, so they can't know anything or talk about it.
Well, in the government
they
stores,
don't have to know anything.
Yeah, in the government stores, they're not allowed to talk about any of the benefits.
That's right, except for size, weight, and color, or name of the product at time of sale.
It's
yeah.
I guess they don't want to be sued or something for having a medical product. Well, I really don't know.
I think they just don't know in a lot of cases, or they may not want to give misinformation, so they don't give any information at all.
And in your store, you worked pretty hard to have that information for people.
Yeah, very hard. Yeah.
And it's a complicated area, the endocannabinoid system, and indica, sativa, and a whole range in between, and all that. It's very, very complicated.
Yeah,
there's a lot to know. But we're going to have to set up some places that will do exactly that. That will educate properly the people that are using it. That will have those things available that they need to have available. And I'm really sorry that the shareholders in the licensed producers system are going to have to take a hit, because they won't be able to compete.
I see they've really took a hit at Canopy. Yeah. They've dropped 2/3.
$4 billion of investment that was put in there initially, that those investors aren't very happy now, apparently.
My son works for I gotta say, my son works for Peace Naturals. Most people don't know this.
They do now.
But my son grew up, and it's really good for him. He gets to work in the in the pot industry, and it's good for him and his girlfriend that are doing it. But I hope they don't see this. But he tells me about the problems they got there. It's just.
I'm really hoping that the people that do find themselves in this legal industry, that we're still knocking so hard for all those reasons, that they're going to work and advocate from the inside to make the changes that are necessary. That eventually we're going to have a bridging between. We're going to have a merging.
Well, that was the whole idea from the start, was to have a nice bridging and a nice, like they're doing down in Jamaica. They're knocking on the farmer stores and asking them to join, not knocking them out.
Or in California, where the people that had the criminal records, they were the ones that got the licenses first, never.
I met the coach of the Saskatchewan Rough Riders at the airport. I seen him there, and I went over and I give the suit type guy my card and said, if you got any, I know you guys get a lot of bumps and injuries, so if you're looking for anything natural, here's my card. And that's all I said, and I went and sat back down in my own seat. But the coach came over, and we started talking about cannabis, and he's from California. Nice. And he says, down there, they made it legal for everybody to grow 99 plants, and he says he doesn't use cannabis, but he says he's all for it. It has changed poverty down there. Yeah. Now, you know what I mean? And they're so it's totally changed. People can feed themselves, they can medicate themselves. It's really changed things.
So hopefully, we're going to take the best of what's happening in these other jurisdictions and adopt them all over the place. Yeah. Unfortunately, here in Canada, it seems like it's municipality by municipality. They all have the ability to either enforce their citizens to not have any access, even though Canada is legal, or to do the opposite and have more access than what the government says we can have. So we're hoping that all shakes itself out. A big part of that is the pursuit of our constitutional challenge going on with yourself, and there's another one that John Conroy is involved in, both and pretty much around the same idea. Still don't have a court date
No. I can see this is going to drag on again.
Oh man, I'm sorry for you that it is. I'm glad you're laughing.
Hey, I'm free. Sort of.
I'd love to hear you say that, Jerry. I'm glad you can look at it that way. There's lots of different ways to look at things, and I know I can't put myself exactly in your shoes. I can imagine, and as I've tried to do that, I get it.
It's a
really
recurring nightmare.
Every day
you got to deal with the same stuff, and then they come and they hit you with new things. You know what I mean?
And you don't know what the
you start feeling
be.
good, and then they'll hit you with a $50,000 bill for a car you only had 5 days. You know what I mean?
I'm so sorry about your personal financial losses. Yeah. As in respect to what they're doing to you, with criminal records or jail time and stuff like that.
I'm not even bothering.
You can wear it like a badge. You know, in the future you'll be honored for it. There's no shame in it, absolutely. And I don't think it's going to happen because it's just so not right. And we're gonna beat those bastards. And I really want to keep up to date with what's going on and how we're going to do that and how you're doing with that and all that. So I really appreciate you coming on and telling me about that. Anything else that you want to throw in before we?
No, I'm going to do an Iboga retreat.
You're going to do an Iboga retreat?
I'm going to do an Iboga retreat on September 13th to 15th.
What are your goals?
So I can deal better with this case, pretty much.
Iboga for anger management. It's
been hard on me the last 3.5 years.
Right?
You know, madness, depression and whatnot, hard to deal with. So so it's supposed to help with those sort of things. Plus,
cool.
Plus I've got some friends that have some issues. They'd like to help with their addictions. So I've always been into plant medicine. So. Getting into mushrooms and the LSD microdosing and whatnot as well. But I just want to educate myself better and find better ways that are natural to help people with, people that go to your service from the east side, they're addicted. So if there's a cure, I'd rather find that instead of some pharmaceutical company that's really not giving you a cure, it's giving you more of a problem.
For sure. And they're in there trying to get dollars for helping out with this, for sure. But, we've got City Council in Vancouver to agree that cannabis should be dispensed to attack that overdose opioid crisis. The mushrooms, they help people with pain, they help people with depression, they help people with addiction. So they also need to be thought of and allowed, and I think we're going to maybe make some inroads in doing that as well. And I'm really interested in how it goes with the ibogaine and that sort of thing as well, because that can really help as well. We need to use all of these natural ways to address what's going on in this unnatural thing in our society, which is people dying.
One treatment can cure addiction, and pretty much any addiction from what I hear. So, but more importantly, the opioid crisis that we got going on. Yeah. So, I'm going to go put myself through the ringer first, and then we'll tell you all about it.
And when are you doing that?
September 13th to 15th. So I started my detoxing yesterday. No more mushrooms or cannabis is allowed.
We're going to see you one more time before you do that as well.
Oh yeah, for sure, a couple more times.
And then we'll certainly follow up with what's going on with that, and not just in your case, but you're going to obviously learn how it's helping other people, and it's all things don't help all people.
That's
but
right.
If you're helping a percentage of people, then that needs to be available.
Well, and it's great. I'm finally going back to do something. That's why I wanted to talk about that and bring that up. It gives me an opportunity to find ways to help people again. So I'm looking forward to that.
I know that's what enriches your life. Yeah. Thank you so much, and thanks again for coming on the show. We look forward to it every week, and we'll follow your progress.
All right.
So, thanks, Jerry. And I think we have another video. Neil, do we have that going on?
And she got us pointed in the direction to get cannabis oil.
And so how long ago was that? So diagnosis at 18 months?
Yeah, diagnosed actually October the 7th of 2013.
Okay.
We met Corey in May of 14.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's been on cannabis the entire time. And at first, I couldn't get a prescription. I am feeling it, honey. I couldn't get a prescription whatsoever from any doctor in Alberta. So I flew to Vancouver and went to MCRCI, got her very first prescription. But while I was there with the doctor, he looked at me and he said, "You're a desperate mother you're grasping at straws." And I told him, I was like, "Yeah, I am." And he said, "What are you going to do if I don't give you this prescription?" I said, "I'm going to go home and I'm going to do it anyways. So you can't deny me the chance to save my child." I was like, I have to know that no matter what happens to her, I've done the best that I've done because I'm the one that has to live the rest of my life. We've left no stone unturned.
So that's a real quick clip of a video done by Mango May and her daughter Cheyenne. You can check that out at Move the Movement. I highly recommend that you do that. It's an amazing story of cannabis helping this young girl that was diagnosed when she was 18 months old with scoliosis and a mass that she had, a cancerous mass. And they sent her home basically just to have her daughter die. They couldn't do anything more for her. And she managed to get her doctor to allow her to have a prescription to be on cannabis oil. And there's her daughter there in the clip. She's now 7 years old, and she's a very happy, healthy young lady, and she's defied all the laws and defied everything that the doctor said was going to happen to her that was bad, and cannabis has played a huge role in that. And you can check that out on Move the Movement, and we'll maybe tell you a little more about her on subsequent shows and other stories that Move the Movement has had. And please check out Move the Movement. They've been gathering stories about people's experiences with cannabis to build a database that we can have of living memories of people and how that all works. So yeah, check that out. My guest today in studio, I'm very pleased to have a young man that has accomplished so much in a fairly short amount of time. With his resume, you would think he'd have gray hair and kids running around, but in fact, he's got a whole lot ahead of him yet.
I do have some gray hairs coming in, though.
There's some gray hairs coming in. Well,
more every day.
Jeremiah Vandermeer is the head of cannabis culture in so many ways. And the man behind the 420 event, that is one of the best events that the city of Vancouver ever sees and ever has seen, and a lot more than that. And I'm going to get him to tell you a bit about it. Hello, Jeremiah, and welcome to the THC show.
Hi, Neil. Thanks for having me on your show. I haven't been on yet. It's very cool to be here today.
Yeah.
And I'm very cool to see you finally doing your own show on Pod TV.
Yeah,
it's been
I've
a
been
while.
putting off for a long time.
You have been, but
offered a show, and I'm really
long
thankful
overdue.
To have Cannabis Culture offer me the studio use and the use of a Neil and give me this platform, because that's what I really strive for, is a platform, because I'm kind of upset about a lot of things to do with the way things are in our world, with the abuse of our sovereignty as individuals, and especially with respect to cannabis prohibition, as you know. And having a platform is what it's all about for us activists, is a way to tell the world what we want to get across, so that we can have the people help us change the world. And you have local roots here. You're from Nanaimo. Basically, tell us a little bit about where you're from.
Nanaimo. What happened to the monitor?
He finds it distracting.
Oh, you find it distracting?
I didn't say it. He thinks that I'm distracted by it. Probably I am. I don't know. I have no idea.
You are distracted.
I try not to look up at the monitor.
I like it because you can see what's going on. But I guess I do find it a little distracting as well. But
I should
still
also
like
say I
it.
never check a chat. Like I haven't got there yet. And one of these days I'll be comfortable enough that I can probably also do some multitasking and keep track of what people are saying. I know there's people that are commenting as the show goes on. And I'm sorry that I'm not paying attention to that and able to answer and respond. We'll get that going on in future shows as like I say, get a little more comfortable with doing this. So back to you growing up in Nanaimo, and what, you took some classes or got a degree in journalism or something?
I do have a degree in journalism.
There you go.
That's how I started at Cannabis Culture, actually, was as the editor of Cannabis Culture magazine.
You applied?
I did. So, yeah, I lived in Nanaimo, and I went to university at Vancouver Island University. It used to be called Malaspina University.
Right.
And when I was there, I was very active on campus. I was the president of the newspaper association. I was the managing editor of our newspaper there, The Navigator.
Right, which is something a journalism student might want to do, right?
I would think that, yes. I would say for anybody who is taking journalism, go and volunteer for your student paper. It's the best thing you can do. It's better than the damn courses. It's like actual real world experience doing this stuff. Well, campus world, which is pretty close to the real world.
Was there any weed reporting going on in your world there?
Well, at our paper there was, because I was there.
I see.
I was also a big weed dealer and had been since the time I was 15 in Nanaimo.
Really?
I sold a lot of pot in Nanaimo for a long time until I moved here. So yeah, I was the weed guy, but also, did my university thing over there. But I moved over here because the opportunities were greater, to say the least. But I worked in the corporate world. I actually worked for Best Buy in their head office in Burnaby as an advertising editor, and I edited all their advertising.
That was before Cannabis Culture.
Before Cannabis Culture, yeah. I did a bunch of other things, but I quit that job, and that's when I actually came to Cannabis Culture. Was just.
And how long ago was that?
Oh man, I guess that was like almost 11 or 12 years ago. 11 years ago.
Is that right?
2008.
And one of the things you took over was the reins of 420.
That's right. So, well, it's funny because you were asking about how I started at Cannabis Culture. I actually applied for the job on Craigslist.
I see.
Yeah, I applied for the position at Cannabis Culture on Craigslist.
They had advertised on Craigslist?
Yeah, Mark put up an ad for an editor for Cannabis Culture magazine, and I had worked in. Not only did I work at like my university paper, but I started working at CanWest News, CanWest Global, it was called back then. When I was 18 years old, I became a photo editor for our local Nanaimo newspaper, the Nanaimo Daily News. And so I started working in journalism when I was pretty young, at 18. Right. In the like real journalism world, I got to sort of see how things were going, even before I went to university. So I knew that world was like, you know, corrupt and all crazy and very corporatist and all this kind of stuff. So, right. And of course I wanted to work in the alternative media, but also weed media was the bomb. So I knew about Mark, of course. I didn't just find him on Craigslist. I was a big, huge Mark Emery fan for a long time.
You were kind of happy to see him on Craigslist.
I was definitely happy to see him on Craigslist, and I didn't. It was a long shot. I didn't even think I'd get called back, but Mark's like, "Come on down." He saw, because I had a pretty good resume, and I came down, and we just got completely blazed, like blitzkrieged, and I couldn't even barely see straight by the time I left here. And Mark, he's like, hey, he gave me a project. He gave me a 10,000 word article he had written on Bob Marley and on the Rastafari, and it was like literally 10,000 words. And he's like, edit this tonight and send it back to me tomorrow. And I was like, okay. and so I did.
Passed the first test.
And it got published in Cannabis Culture magazine in the way I edited it from that original edit. And it was awesome. Mark did a great job, and that's how I ended up getting the job at Cannabis Culture. So
what did 420 look like when you took it over?
Well, when I took over 420, Jacob Hunter, the activist, was in charge of it.
Right.
So it actually didn't look very good, unfortunately. There was a bit of an issue because 420 looked good on the surface. It looked cool when you showed up there. But behind the scenes, there were some issues because, unfortunately, the people who were in charge of it decided that they were going to force everybody to pay the year before I started. So they, instead of the way we do 420, well, the way we do 420 is it's the way 420 started was holistically. People just started holding up their signs and selling weed everywhere, and then they started to put up their tents and kiosks, right, and their booths. So people were selling weed openly, had these booths.
Dan and I, through David, set up the first table, had our jars there. David preached hug power at the cops while we sold weed. And then that grew from there.
And that started to spread. So that
had already happened before you got here, right? There was already booths?
There were already, I would say, at least a dozen tents set up.
Right.
And I was still there. I was there as a photographer years before and helping organize and stuff.
Right.
But yeah, so one year, I can't remember how long ago it was now. It was like 8 or 9 years ago. They had the bright idea of, well, if we charge people for the booths, then we can generate enough money to get a better stage, because we were doing it on the stairs at the time.
Yeah, I built a stage at one point, brought in a bunch of 2x10s and plywood and
I remember that.
Yeah.
But so we wanted
a better sound system.
We wanted a bigger stage.
We're getting bigger every year. That was it. We needed
wanted
more
a bigger
joints.
stage.
We needed everything. Yeah.
And so some of us, me included, who were helping take part in organizing things, said, I don't think we should force people to pay. But they decided to go the other way, and they just said anybody who has a booth has to pay. And so they went around to try to enforce that on 420 and said, you haven't paid us yet. You have to give us this and all this. So it ended up being a very contentious sort of thing. So I took over that next year, and right away started doing it. Said anybody can come down for free if you want to set up a tent at 420. You can set up a tent for free, no matter who you are. It doesn't matter, because the people that started 420 were those people, the people that made 420 what it is, and such an awesome thing.
Some people wanted to help us with the costs.
Of course,
we're more than willing to pay for that.
And there are more than enough people who are willing to have us hold them a spot in the morning. So we'll go down there and say,
we were being asked for that. Can you hold us a spot?
Exactly. So it's that easy to just say, okay, we'll hold you a spot, but it's going to cost you $300. And people were more than happy to do that. And we ended up getting literally hundreds over a very short period, 2 years. By the time 2 years was up, we had literally hundreds of booths. And it just kept getting bigger.
Professional stage and a sound system.
We had 2 stages actually at that time. We did. We had a stage on one side of the art gallery, and Neil ran one of the stages, actually.
Yep. I got to be the MC on the second stage there for a few years.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, 420 has definitely progressed over those, even in just a short period of time, it's become something really huge.
Are you going to be able to beat last year?
Nah.
Are you going to try?
No, I'm not even going to try.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm going to try. I'm gonna try.
Okay, well,
but
your expectations aren't as high because that was awesome.
But it's not always about me trying.
Right.
Though.
I mean, what's the government going to do next year? Have you had any?
I'm not even that worried about the government. I'm more worried, as I always am. Like, to be honest, the thing that every single year the government gives us a bunch of problems. The newspapers give us a bunch of issues. You know, there's like all this controversy about, the activists and blah, blah, blah. The press is after us, calling us all the time. None of that shit bothers me at all. I don't care about any of that stuff. That stuff doesn't make me wake up at 3 a.m. What makes me wake up at 3 a.m. like, oh my God, is funding, is financing, is figuring out how the fuck we're gonna pay for all this shit. Because if not, we're gonna be in the hole for like $500,000.
Well, you have to commit to a bunch of money beforehand.
We got to commit exactly, and that is getting harder and harder to do every year because we have less sponsors every single year, and some of our major sponsors are probably not going to be there next year, and that puts a big hole in our budget. And really, in order to make a big, huge, crazy 420 like we had last year, it's all about how much money we have. And really having a group like Cypress Hill costs a lot of money.
So do you think that by next year there'll be any corporate sponsors that you would be acceptable? There would be.
Hey, if they're out there, come on down.
I would being involved.
I'm looking for those, and I think maybe I'm just I'm better at working with the weed community or something. But the corporate sponsors seem to be afraid of us, and because of the media that we get. And because of how it looks, we'd have to have a pretty ballsy corporate sponsor.
Well, maybe somebody who's a restaurant, got a couple of restaurants in the area.
Those are good. Those are great.
There's a lot of benefit.
Restaurants in the area and stuff, that's
sure.
great, Neil. But what I need is enough that would cost virtually the price of a restaurant in the neighborhood.
Right.
Those kind of sponsorships.
And there might be others.
There's different levels of sponsorship, and we can raise a lot of money. There's still lots of sponsors, but they're smaller sponsors, and there's a big difference because some people can throw in $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. The big sponsors throw in like $100,000. Right, so there's a big difference there,
and we're a long ways away.
Yeah,
like there could be a lot of changes between now and next April, with respect to how cannabis is viewed in our society.
Well, that's
Hopefully, they're positive changes.
I am optimistic.
What do you think's going to happen with that?
I am optimist prime.
Me too.
But I think that that I am also
realist.
I'm
prime.
just being I'm being a realist about it. It's going to be a lot more difficult this year to do something really huge. Not to say that we can't have a really huge show. There's still going to be as many people there no matter what we do.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be just as big. We probably just won't be able to afford. Like I was hoping this year we'd be able to afford Damian Marley, like as a musical act. But he ain't cheap though. So, and he's probably
he's more
expensive.
You gotta have some
more expensive than Cypress
there.
Hill. So, what's that?
More expensive on 420.
Yeah, because these guys are weed people, they know that they can charge us more for 420. Like behind the scenes, I don't want to tell you the kind of shit that goes on because
isn't there any of them that'll play for free just because it's a feather in their cap to play for 420 in Vancouver?
Sure, there's lots of people who'll play for free.
Okay,
but it's not Cypress Hill.
Okay,
yeah. And
that's all right. Give somebody else a shot that already has some sort of a rep. I'm sure.
Even so, like for instance, last year. Should I be telling these stories?
Well, I wouldn't try to outdo Cypress Hill from a financial point of view.
Classified. Mm-hmm. Classified was thinking about coming last year.
Right.
It was last minute and stuff. And we'd love to have Class on. Like, he'd be amazing to have. And he's like a Canadian artist, but he wants to be paid too. Everybody wants to be paid.
I know they got costs and they should have
Everybody
those
wants to be paid.
But I just think there's prestige. I'm not in that industry. I can't say. They're probably laughing at me. They're probably hearing me say that and laughing at me that there's enough prestige in playing 420
that's
Vancouver.
Their job, right? So they don't work for free. You're an activist. You're used to doing a lot of hard work for free. Most people don't do that. Most people, they don't work for free. And maybe that's
but it's not free what I do because there's so much juice or payback in knowing that I'm changing things in positive ways, that I'm resulting in things happening that are super positive. That to me is a big time payback. I think if I was a big time celebrity musician, that I would want to go and support what we've done here in Vancouver with respect to bringing that issue to where it is in the public's eye with cannabis and how we're changing things, and that they would want to not only support that but have it as a feather in their cap that they played at 420 in front of 100. I'll bet you that Cypress Hill came out of that event way ahead of where
hell
they
yeah.
were before they played there. Because
Yeah, they
of
came
the
ahead about
publicity
100
they
grand
got,
ahead. Yeah.
You know, well, not just the money not the money that you paid them, but in all the other
I'm just kidding.
residuals from that.
No, trust
I mean,
me. Cypress Hill loved that event
They
very
were
much.
trending all over the place.
They told me a lot about it afterwards. We're still talking to them.
Yeah, I think there's huge value in playing an event like 420 with that type of
Those guys are
exposure.
very cool, and they were very thankful for the event. They had an amazing time when they were here. It was really huge, and just they were very impressed by that the event was a volunteer event, and that
licensed,
and and we had insurance and everything. No, they were very. We had some problems. So I don't know how many people know this, but the politicians here in Vancouver were contacting Cypress Hill directly, trying to stop them from coming to the show, and doing all kinds of shenanigans behind the scenes, trying to fuck with us.
I know.
A whole bunch of things. So this is what we get to deal with these local politicians. But Cypress Hill was like, you know what? Fuck you. And they said to them, the government, every single person that tried to harass them, the media and everything, they said, no, we're doing it. And they told me, Sendog said to me right after, he's like, we're not going to do this show. We were, because during the process, there was some, I was worried because we didn't have insurance, and it was very difficult for me to get insurance, very hard. And so,
and you haven't had it in other years, right?
We've never had it before.
Yeah. And this is the thing. I mean, you're constantly being attacked by all these different groups that don't want us to have 420 there.
Oh yeah.
And thank you for sticking in there and keeping it going, because it would have been pretty easy to fold under a lot of that pressure.
Oh no way, man. We're never gonna fold. Yeah, fuck that.
Well, and that's the spirit, right? And that's the spirit that's driven our issue to where we're driving it to. And we're not. We haven't met our destinations yet.
And
but
you know what? All of this
they're
stuff,
trying hard.
It's all a bunch of hot air, to be honest, though. And I do. It seems on the surface, like anybody looking in at this whole thing, it seems like quite a drama, and it seems like the city's up in arms, the mayor's, everybody's upset, and there's all these quotes in the paper and stuff. But again, it's like, what can they really do, though?
Well, and you're having meetings with these people where they're cooperating. And on the one hand, it's unpermitted, except that actually not only do they permit it, but they facilitate it.
They do.
And they even send you a letter, I think, that basically says they're permitting it. That isn't really a permit, but it is.
Yeah,
and,
they give me a letter permitting it, but it's not permitted, though. Yeah, so no, it's a funny... We play this weird double-edged sword game with them where the city staff understand that this is going to happen and that constitutionally we have a right to do this, and that the politicians might be up in arms and make a big fuss about it every year, but we're going to be doing it.
And the police know that it's a lot harder to stop than what you might think, so they don't really want that aggravation.
But I think part of it is that the people that are actually running it, like the city council and stuff, they don't actually know what goes into running any kind of event. Like, they don't actually take part in executing any of these events that happen in the city, so they don't have the first clue about what actually goes into doing something like this. And it takes a hell of a lot of work from a whole bunch of different levels. And things like, Melissa DeGenova, a city councilor, can come and say, oh, it's not safe, and they don't have a safety plan.
They're all not hurt.
Trust me, we have a safety plan because we work with every single department of the city, the engineers from every single department, tiring labor over for hours and hours, figuring out how to do safe things like safety plans. So no, we do everything professionally.
And always a big part of the organizing from the beginning was, this is a huge crowd of people that's going to show up there. How do we keep them safe?
Exactly.
I mean, whether the city tells us to or not, or whether these other departments have it, we always were like, oh man, we got to make sure.
Well, and that's why it's true. We
make people sit for the joint toss. We all kinds of things.
We have our own policies that we've sort of morphed over the years from the art gallery, because the art gallery was actually kind of terrifying running the event at the art gallery. When the crowd started getting really big, I was worried that something really bad was going to happen.
I think you were standing there with Jody and I one time when they were having the real sort of death metal going on, and everybody was in the mosh pit, and there was that kind of intense energy going on, and we were like, oh man, let's hope we survive this.
Yeah, that one was pretty rough.
That changed a lot of our policies.
That one was bad, but even I think even a year or two after that, the final year of the art gallery, it was really rough, and the bodies were so crammed in, and tight. It's not like at the Sunset Beach where there's a lot of space to breathe. You can go up the hills, onto the road, into the water if you have to, or onto the beach or whatever. At the art gallery, it's just cement walls everywhere around.
Yeah, you go around the corner and now you can't see anything.
Right, and there's when the bodies get in there, it's like you're up against a body or a cement wall or a booth or something, right? Sardines. So, and the booths, Johnny's Medtainer booth, which he always had right next to the stage, stage, which was kind of, when the crowds get risky or get bigger, that's a risky sort of proposition. Bodies were going into the poles of his tent, crushing them, and his tent was falling in because it was getting crushed by all the bodies.
And long before that
was scary.
Moving past the police barriers into the street to the point where they have to close the streets down all around.
No, they knocked the fences over because the idiot police, and I'm sorry, for the most part they're really good, but they were being so stubborn about those fences. They're like, we're putting up the fences, and I was arguing with them. I'm like, don't put up the fences. Don't put up the fences. It makes it so tight in there. You're crushing us. Those fences are just going to get knocked down every fucking time. They get knocked over every single time. They're like, no, we're doing it anyways. Knocked right over. And then they did it again the next year, and I'm like, I don't want to be back here next year doing this with you guys. No fences, no fences, no fences, and then so they didn't do it. But it kept
stopped the cars early and then.
So stupid. Yeah, because what they didn't want to do was shut the road down, right?
I know.
Because we shut down so many downtown when we do it at the Art Gallery. We shut down 4 roads. And so they were so pissed off about that.
Yeah.
That was
not
really
just for 420, but for Cannabis Day as well. It was going, at a similar pace to what 420 was. And then, the infamous 2015 fiasco, the VPD fiasco, and then we had to
Cannabis
move to Thornton
Day.
Park.
Well, that was an interesting one. Yeah, there's stories about all these things, but I don't know.
Too many stories.
Too many stories. Yeah, that was not a good one at Cannabis Day. But I'm glad we have a better relationship with the people of the city now. We'll see how it goes next year. They're getting all down our necks too about 420 in general, and they're like, we have to do something about this, different this year.
Well, what they have to do is permit it.
Yeah. Good luck on that.
Give you a license to do what we do. And we'll do it like we did it every year, where nobody gets hurt, or it's so minimal compared to any other event of that size. And hopefully that's what can happen. So.
They keep flexing muscles. Like the tone has changed, in that they don't want us to be openly selling marijuana products in a big event like this without the province having some say over what's happening, right? So. Right. The way that their threats have been going since the past year is very vague, but it's
funny,
sort
of... The LPs also don't want us selling weed there other than what the province
No, the LPs, I think, want us to be able to sell weed there. They want to be able to sell it there.
Well, that's what I mean. I said the LPs also don't want us to sell weed there other than what would be approved by the province.
Right. So, to be honest...
there's kind of a meshing of what city council is...
I'd be careful. I'd be careful, Neil, in this... using a paintbrush to paint the LPs as something, because there are how many LPs now, like 200 and something.
And I get it that they don't all want to advocate for the closing down of the competition,
right?
But unfortunately,
lots of them don't.
They are all tainted by the fact that there's a bunch of them that are vocally, openly advocating for the shutting down of what is their competition.
Well, they're only tainted. They're only tainted if you don't pay attention to the nuances, though. So if you're a smart guy, you don't have to paint them all with that same paintbrush. You can point out the distinction between them. Some LPs aren't as money grubbing and as horrible as the others.
And
there's going to be in the future. There's going to be a lot more. Like
I plan to shame a bunch of people on this show. I plan to shame municipalities that won't allow for the distribution of high dose edibles to combat the overdose crisis. I plan to shame the Medical Association in Canada here.
I'm with you.
That, and what the reefer madness that they're still engaged in. I plan to shame the police still because they're still enforcing, although no tickets so far for impaired driving for cannabis. So thank you, and I recognize that as a statement by the police in British Columbia.
But you don't want to implicate somebody. You don't want to implicate somebody who hasn't done anything wrong. And somebody who actually might even be trying to help you if you're saying that they've done something wrong by just being an LP.
Well, I don't want them to stop. I want them to keep doing the right thing as an LP.
I don't think there's anything wrong with.
I have been.
I don't think there's anything wrong with being a licensed producer. It's being a licensed producer in a system that sucks, but it's not the people. It's not the producer's fault necessarily. Some of them you could blame. There's a difference between those. I think that people are going to try to take opportunities in business, and that makes sense. It's totally legal to do that.
And by shaming them and kind of painting them all with the same brush, I am providing them with opportunities for those that are good to stand up and say so, and for them to separate themselves from the others and to agree with me, and and we'll stand together. And pretty soon there'll be more police on our side and more doctors on our side and more of these LPs on our side, and we'll all be a united front pretty much, and the overregulation will have to go away. They're going to have to.
Trust me, there's going to
keep doing what
there's going to be good LPs.
There are good LPs. I know there are, and there's good people working for those LPs. I know that's true too.
Yeah.
And I just have to believe that those are still good people, that they don't stop being good people just because they took a big contract. that they think they can do something good for, you know, the goals that we all still have, you know, within the system instead of outside of it. And that's always been a valiant way, and I don't take that away from them. That's all.
Again, I mean, if we're really looking at it and being logical about it, there's probably, when I look at LPs and stuff out there, the smaller ones, they're not even making as much money as, say, one dispensary. You know, like the one dispensary in Vancouver, or maybe not in Vancouver, but in Toronto, say, one dispensary in Toronto can make you a lot of money. An illegal one.
Yes.
Right? So there's a lot of, you know, just because that dispensary owner happens to be using, you know, whatever the system is to his advantage to try to make money, I mean, just the fact of him being illegal itself doesn't really make them more ethical or better or something.
Well, and I've watched the process too. These dispensary owners that really just want to keep helping the clients that they've been helping, that are being forced to either shut their doors or agree to conform down the road. Many of them are staying open, agreeing to conform because they think by the time that confirmation has to be that maybe things will change. They're not happy about it. The farm is not happy about having to go the LP route, but it is what it is. So that's how a lot of them are getting sucked into the system.
I think everybody should be allowed to sell weed. The more people selling weed, the better.
We just need the regulations to get reasonable so that you can support such things.
Yes.
I mean, what's Vancouver
That's not the
doing?
business owner's fault.
For a license.
That's the government's fault.
I know, it's all the government's fault.
Yeah.
All of this is the government. Most of those LP, well, I don't know. Maybe there's some business.
I would say
that,
even
you know,
Aurora.
Like
think of Aurora.
But I don't think so.
So Aurora is one of the biggest LPs, right? And it's easy to say that, oh, those guys are a bunch of jerks because they're a big company and everything. But Aurora was sponsoring 420 up until a couple years until they really weren't allowed to anymore. Yeah. Like Terry from Aurora, he's an old guy who used to come here and smoke weed with us and stuff.
I know.
He was a cool guy.
I really hope they want that merge and that bridge to happen as much as we do on our side. You know, Dana Larson sat there and said that he hopes that you know, before too long, we'll all want to go to work for them. We'll all want to use their stores because they got the better prices and the better weed and the better people working for them, and it's all of us. And there's no $30,000 license fee or like any other business, you know, $54 or whatever it is. You know, that's
this is what we knew.
I don't know if I mentioned.
We knew this was going to happen. This is a bigger issue. Just before you mention that, this is something that's indicative of a larger issue here. What we have against is not against business or weed business. It's against all business, and it's that the fact that right now there's all these private centers of power, really, really rich people with a lot of money, means that they have an advantage in society. And so they can come in and, you know, when they design a system that's obviously leaning heavily in their favor, it's easy for them to monopolize everything. But that happens in every single kind of business, no matter what one is out there. Like, now that we have legal weed, it's just become part of the rest of the business classes. And that's...
it's that lack of competition that happens because of them.
We need to change all of business and balance society in a different way so that these crazy, you know, private centers of power can't just monopolize everything as soon as there's a new frontier. Right?
100%. Our public servants, what they should be regulating is to make sure that it's an even playing field for people to be able to dispense cannabis.
But they've done just the opposite in this case.
They've done just the opposite.
They've done everything they can to try to funnel it into private centers, and so that doesn't give anybody else, the mom and pops aren't even allowed to play.
Yeah, I know. Well, and huge fines if they do, or jail time, and you know, incredible $5 million fine for opening a dispensary outside of the system is just insane.
Yep.
And we're going to expose all of that because that can't be right. And if we live in a society where they can get away with that, then we really need to rethink our society, because we need to have our public servants much more scrutinized and much more limited than what they're proving to be. With and I mean, thank God for the attempt to or the so-called legalization, because it gets to show us. We get to really say, well, holy shit! Like the public isn't stupid. They're confused a little bit. I talked about that in my opening rant as well. I mean, for those that don't really know, I mean, what the hell is cannabis, this dangerous drug that they have to use the criminal law to make sure people can't be involved with because it's so dangerous? Or is it some miracle medicinal herb that even really sick people can use and it saves people's lives? And so out there in the general public, they're getting more and more to understand, well, this is a medicinal herb, and the only threat that it has to society is the rich corporations that want to sell you the pharmaceuticals and the synthetics and the substitutes. So we're winning. It's just going to take a little bit of time, but hopefully we don't live in a society where they're going to get away with being able to do what they're doing with the protection racket that they're putting in place to protect this government monopoly. That can't be allowed here. I said to Rob Laurie,
they're getting shit for it every day, though.
They can, because they see themselves as sovereigns, which I think I am too, and you are too, but they have set themselves aside as being sovereign and untouchable, and they can make whatever laws and rules they want. And I said, okay, I get that. They've got that power, they can make whatever laws they want. But how do they get to continue those laws that they make when the evidence is crystal clear that you are causing harm and death and ruining lives and wasting money?
Yeah, but who knows what the laws really are, though? And that's the problem, is that average Joe doesn't pay enough attention to any details and can't possibly. Yeah. So I think there's something just inherent about being a human where there's going to be powerful people that manipulate the system to tinker with it so that on the surface, general public sees one thing, but really when you look at the details of something, it's really harsh. And that's kind of exactly what we have here. Is on the surface, yay, we have legalization. Yeah. We're one of the first countries. Oh, look, stores and everything. But who's actually allowed to be part of those things? Yeah. They basically make a system that...
And what's happening to people that want to have stores that can't? And yeah, it's...
right.
It's going to take a while.
It's unfair, and it favors certain people. There's nepotism involved. Look at the people that involve racism involved, all of this stuff. Continuing to fund police budgets, using the new laws themselves to continue to throw money at police for no reason at all.
And the ones being hurt are the poor people and the sick people.
Yeah.
It's just, we're so far from being done yet. I mean, that's the thing.
Oh, no.
Protest is still so required. 420 is a huge protest. You and I talked earlier about the desire for a platform, that's what we work towards. Well, that's what 420 is.
Yeah.
Freddie was complaining about nobody protesting, and I said, well, for me personally and a bunch of other people that help with it, 420 is kind of one of those days, and Cannabis Day is kind of one of those days, and the Global Marijuana March are those days where we get media attention and we get huge crowds of people, and we can actually get our message out there.
That's a pretty friggin' big protest too.
It really is.
Like, what do you want? Some 20 people standing outside of the city hall?
It's hard to mobilize, even a couple hundred people to go for a march to City Hall for any
City Hall doesn't even give a shit if you mobilize 10,000 people.
Yeah.
They give a shit about 420.
Yeah.
And the reason they do is because they see 150,000 people come out for that thing.
Those are voters.
That's a lot of people.
And the media pays attention, and so they gotta pay attention.
And that's why they're all up in arms about it so much, because the stakes are higher and it actually matters, right? So yeah, it's a funny thing. The media squabbles so much about this kind of stuff, but it's funny how that happens right before 420, and then as soon as we do 420, everybody just has to shut up because it's always so good.
And then they have the fireworks where the streets are completely covered in litter, the mayhem that happens, and all of that. And
where nothing bad happened at 420 at all, and it went off without any problems, like it does every single year.
I know.
And all of the bitching and complaining that happened for months beforehand was just a bunch of... Basically, it's just...
And they're hoping. They're sitting there...
It's sensationalism.
Not all of them, I will say. And thankfully, not all the councillors are Melissa DiGenola. If it was a council made up of her, then it would be a worse battle. But, I mean, she sits there and just hopes. Those people are hoping. Carrie Jang, they're hoping that bad things happen. They want somebody to die at a 420 so they can say, oh, look what happened, blah, blah, blah. I'm telling you, that's their mentality.
I'm not sure.
They really wish us the worst.
I might be taking a bit of a leap.
So maybe I am, but that's, I read situations and I don't believe in coincidences as much as some people do, and I think a lot of coincidences are really kind of conspires.
Yeah.
And when I see what their
I would say whether they believe that or not, whether they want that or not, you can't really say that unless you have proof. You can't really say that somebody wants somebody else to die without proof. So I would just,
it was in the
for your own journalistic integrity.
But, I was there. I seen not only what was said, but how it was said. I saw the comments, witnessed her making those comments. And I think that they really had a hope that things would go bad for us. That
she's nasty for sure.
Could be reason
I wouldn't put it past her. I wouldn't put it past her at all.
I don't think they're happy that we pulled it off.
I mean, I don't think that we did. I surely hope not. I surely hope that nobody...
You would hope not. Yes, I agree. It'd be nice to think that people that are running for public office would have, the whole public's interest in mind and not such a narrow view of things or such a bias. Because, when the Parks Board gets all upset that we're there doing that day because that's a public park and the public needs to have access to the park, and the public can't have access to the park that day because there's too many people there. Well, too many people there, that's the public. That's the public having access to the park. That's more people accessing your park than to access it on a normal day.
Isn't that
so
really
do you
funny?
or don't you want people to access the park because we're accessing the park?
It's so weird how the human brain can just hear two completely opposite opposing things and entertain them at the same time, and everyone's like, oh yeah, that makes sense to people. Yeah.
The hypocrisy
It's-
is just insane. I mean,
Yeah.
Prohibition and this war against cannabis users is just a logic-free zone, absolutely.
It
I mean,
is
some of it makes sense
logic-free.
when you follow the money, but most
It's
of it
such
is just a bunch
doublespeak,
of,
though.
alcohol swigging, pill popping, people sitting there saying, "Oh, well, look at the potheads," those are bad people, and holy shit, they're the best people. So anyway, we're still in an upside down, backwards world. We're trying to unfuck it, and that's what we're doing here.
Yeah.
It's a fucked up world. We're trying to unfuck it. That's what this show's all about. And I'm glad I'm able to say that, and I don't have government forces swooping in and censoring me, or and then there's an appropriate time to use bad language. And it's when we're talking about what's happening with prohibition. It's really, really horrible. I know I use that word a lot, but it is. I get to experience the people that are suffering, as you would as well. People that want to tell me their story about how prohibition has cost them their children, or has cost them their livelihood, or their job, or their license, or on and on and on it goes. And it's all just a war against good people to protect a bunch of corporate elites. And so we got to stop it somehow, and we're trying real hard. And you're at the forefront of that. I just want to know what your goals are and how they mesh with your projections. Are we going to attain our goals, and what are your goals for the future here? We talked a little bit.
Oh, of course we're going to attain our goals.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Good, because we're not there yet.
But I'm not fighting to lose.
Freddie Pritchard would have us believe that that it ain't going to get one. That and I love Freddie, and Freddie knows.
Well,
that.
I don't have my crystal ball in front of me right now, but. I would say no. We have to be optimists about this, or what the hell's the point?
So we're gonna get.
If you're gonna be like
Freddie,
I love Freddie, but being that cynical about something doesn't really do you any good. Because then why don't you just shut up and go blow your brains out or something? Like it doesn't. What's the point?
It has just kind of got worse a little bit. I mean, it has also gotten better.
But it's gonna.
So it's gonna get. We're gonna get.
Shit was even worse before. Like way worse.
Yeah. Well,
they weren't. At least they're not burning us at the stake right now.
It was not way worse for medical users.
Well,
it was not way worse
you're right.
for them. I mean, it was before that.
It could be worse. It could be worse.
It could be worse.
And I think that guys like Trump should be like an indicator of how much worse it really could be. Imagine if guys like that were not just an anomaly, but were really in charge all the time, and like we actually lived in a crazy fascist society. I'm not saying we don't now. We're pretty close, but it's getting worse with guys like that. It could be a lot better, and it can be a lot worse. Yeah. We're somewhere in the middle, and so I'm thinking
we're going in the right direction. We're going to still make ground, and eventually we'll have the story that Dana Larson talked about that we can.
We're going to have everything that we want. We're going to achieve every goal that we want. I'm not saying it's happening overnight.
It takes time.
It's probably going to be a little while. But yeah, of course.
So what can people do?
As time goes on, as long as we don't blow the earth up, as long as Trump doesn't like nuke any hurricanes or anything. Yeah.
Nuke a hurricane.
If he nukes a hurricane, he will. But yeah, as long as we don't blow the earth up prematurely, I think that humans will continue to work towards being better to each other, and that includes getting rid of these bullshit prohibitions. It's just a matter of time. We're on the right track. People are waking up. You can't hide the truth.
We got here by
you can't hide the truth on the internet and everywhere else. So
we got here by a whole bunch of people doing stuff.
Yeah.
What can people do? How can people get involved in moving us further?
Well, there's a few things that people can do. I think right now people can speak out. I mean, it's always the same thing. It's about educating yourself. First of all, finding out what's really going on, and then speaking out about it and trying to make it better.
There's a lot of ways to do that with social media and other.
There's lots of ways to do that. Yeah, we're now afforded so many different avenues of actually having a voice and being able to speak out. So there's a million and one ways to do that, and even things like directly getting a hold of your politicians and stuff. That actually does work.
It makes a difference.
It does work, and and fighting with them if you have to. A lot.
Well, I'm going back a second and a third and a fourth time, and then they know your face, and then they know your issue, and then they got to have answers for you.
That's right. Yeah,
and brush
really
you off if they can.
Bug them.
Bug them.
It's like if you want anything, keep working until you get it.
Yeah.
Keep bugging them. It's like it's like any if the bank doesn't you take some money from you or something and you need to get it back, it's going to be hard for you to get it back because you got to phone and bug them, and they're going to put you on hold. They're going to hang up on you. You got to call back, but you keep bugging them. You're going to keep bugging them.
Don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid of bugging them, because you can talk truth to power, and eventually it makes a difference, and you feel good doing it when you do it. You'd be surprised. And so they try to intimidate us into not saying anything. They try to overwhelm us and all of that. But when you actually take a step forward and speak that truth to that politician that can make a difference, you'll find that there's a lot of gratification in that, and you might just actually make a difference. And if enough people do that, then we definitely make a difference.
Well,
that's how we got here.
And I think some of this is just going to be a matter of time, and it's going to be a matter of people getting arrested and really good lawyers overturning laws.
Yeah,
and because
a lot of it
in the past in Canada, you didn't really get a heck of a lot by trying to appeal to politicians, because they don't do a fucking thing. Yeah. And they never moved the laws on the needle at all on cannabis until Trudeau. But all the other ones before that basically did the bare minimum that they could possibly do and just implement regulations when the court told them they had to constitutionally, right? So, you know, it's
They'll
about...
get away with whatever they can, so we got to hold their feet to the fire.
They're going to keep fucking with us, and we're going to keep fighting them in court, and using logic and judges who are, you know, getting more progressive as time goes on. These old, you know, dinosaur judges. Not all of them. There's some young ones that are pretty, I don't know, the justice system has its own serious issues. I've seen judges, like the one in Chris Bennett's case that was a total fucking kook. He wasn't an old guy.
What a horrible decision in that case, after hearing all of the evidence, to come up with what he did. Was
so it's a wild card, though. It's like you could get a good judge, you could get a bad one, right? So over
about
time,
greed and corruption. It's about profits over patience, and it's about what's right and wrong. And,
and it's going to be harder to hide some of the like egregiousness of these fucking of the hypocrisy of the whole thing, because like, you know, now there's all these people making billions of dollars off cannabis, and they're still going to be arresting people and putting them in prison for the same thing. That's not how it works in our society. Well, it's like if I sold apples and I wasn't allowed to, you don't go to jail for selling apples when you don't have a license to sell apples.
And the hypocrisy in a world where they sell cigarettes at every grocery store and gas station, no matter what the proximity to a school is, and alcohol and what it costs to get a license, and the flexibility and freedom that they have compared to cannabis. I mean, eventually they can't get away with it. The thing I was going to mention earlier was that in Saskatchewan, there was a $10,000 license fee for dispensaries. They've now lowered that to $85.
Yay!
So, you know, it is moving in the right direction, and hopefully that'll continue, because they're not going to stand the scrutiny of public attention when they've got such outrageous discrepancies in what they're doing.
They fuck the system up so bad that nobody in their right mind can possibly like going to these new stores and buying weed right now. Yeah. It's too expensive. The weed is shit, and it comes in a bunch of weird plastic containers that nobody likes. So it's like a very poor experience.
Criminal laws against
Can't hide that.
For decades. They can't be trusted. The governments can't be trusted. The medical association can't be trusted because of their past history on these things. And
on the radio on my way over here, I heard an article, like a news story on News 1130, about how bad the rollout in British Columbia of the marijuana laws have been, and about how everybody hates them, and that BC is the worst out of any province, and that we're just they basically fucked it up completely. And the Liberal government is criticizing the NDP for fucking it up so bad and saying all these things that I agree with, but of course the Liberals will try to use it to their advantage. Actually, it's funny, I was talking to my friend who is from another province about their conservative government, like Alberta, about their conservative government and how it's been really great for all the stores there. I'm like, bring the Liberals back. Like, bring not the federal Liberals. The Liberals in our province are much more conservative. They're like more conservative than the conservatives. But they're not on social issues, on financial stuff. Like, they really like private business a lot. So we got the NDP government at just the wrong time. If it was a Liberal,
haven't been standing up for the medical dispensaries, as John Horgan told me he would. You know, that just before he was premier, he said he was going to champion the cause of the medical dispensaries.
No,
but no, some of the
liars
they've put on.
John Horgan is a liar, straight up. I'm happy to say it here publicly. John Horgan is a liar. These guys said that they were going to do a whole bunch of things that they didn't do, and they haven't helped us even one iota, one little bit. They've done everything they can to hurt our community instead of help them. And all these new rules that they've implemented, that they mimicked from the federal government on the BC level, could have been done so much better. It's a bullshit system. They fucked it up completely. And really what they're doing is they're just in the pockets of the BC GEU. The union, the government workers union, is so powerful, and that's who basically runs the NDP and pays for them to be there. And so, you know, they do a lot of butt kissing to those guys. They're a very powerful union, and they're in charge of running the province, the weed in the province. And so now it's all their, you know,
everything goes through them.
Yeah, through them. So no, it's a bad thing. I just was watching the movie Hoffa, directed by Danny DeVito. It stars Jack Nicholson as Jimmy Hoffa, and I was thinking the whole time about the BCGEU.
I used to be a member of the BCGEU, so I'm allowed to say that. But
I see.
Yeah.
Well, no, the corruption runs deep, and it's a special interests. The good thing is we can grow a few plants for ourselves. We need to be able to grow a lot more than 4, but at least we can grow something. We better not lose that. That better go in the right direction as well. And we can form co-ops perhaps, and we can do some other things. We're gonna have to figure out how we can supply cannabis to that community that we're talking about on the downtown east side corridor there. That suits those needs. That doesn't go through the LPs because it sort of can't based on what their restrictions are. And I hope that one of the things we've demonstrated with the CSP is that you can put a whole lot of high-dose edibles into a community for 2.5 years and not have any problems whatsoever. We've had people eat too much.
You can dose the shit out of the community and they'll be just fine.
So there's really there's no
just
pressing
flood
need
the brownies
to restrict that from happening. We're doing that to save people's lives and to get them access to cannabis to save their damn lives. So unless there's a really good reason to not allow that to happen, then they have no business not allowing it to happen. So we're going to force that issue, and it needs to be right across Canada, that every municipality, and shame on them if they don't, but they need to allow places to open that will provide easy access for people to get high-dose edibles and stuff. So,
oh, man. And the idea that you're only going to have 10 milligrams per brownie or cookie or whatever.
That's crazy.
It's so
that
stupid.
should be available. You should be able to get 10 milligrams. It shouldn't be hard to get. It shouldn't be expensive. But that's a dose that people would try if they haven't tried it before. That's a good dose to start at, and then wait for 45 minutes or an hour and see how you feel. And
I love that all these
are going to end up with you wanting a lot more than that.
These rules are all being determined by people who have no fucking clue what they're talking about.
Right. Well,
they don't
have
seriously,
that motivation.
these people have never eaten weed before. They probably never even smoked weed. But they maybe they've smoked it and they're like, oh yeah, well, eating weed is not the same as smoking it. It's not. They think that there's going to be like, oh, like I heard Mike Farnworth say, oh, well, nobody's going to be, once the edibles are out there, nobody's going to be smoking it anymore. They're going to be drinking it. It's like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, idiot. Wow. People like smoking weed. They're never going to be like, we've offered them drinks. You can get a drink here with weed in it, or used to be able to, and it wasn't that popular. People don't, like, I'm sure people will drink it too, but that's not the big draw.
And there'll be lots of vape pens, but there's always going to be lots of people who want to smoke the joint. I'm always going to want to smoke my joint.
Yeah, when you eat weed, it takes forever to get high. Who wants to wait 40 minutes every time you want to get high?
And it's
good if you can wait, but I can't wait. I need to get high now.
Yeah, and it's a different kind of a high. So yeah, everybody should just have choice. That's the whole idea. We're all free people. We're all sovereign beings. We want to trade amongst each other. We want to have whatever there is to have. There's new things all the time. If there's problems with things, okay, government, tell us what the problems are. And if you have to, put some other regulations.
First of all, how about don't make any rules against things that don't hurt people? Yeah. Like if something hurts somebody, then think about making a rule only if you have to.
And if the rule is causing more harm than it's preventing, then the rule isn't valid. Like, stop it already.
Right.
So.
Yeah, you still have to preserve people's freedoms, man.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. It's a fight for freedom. Yeah. And this is a vehicle to get there. And Mr. Jeremiah.
And to get high, too. Pass it over.
So proud to be associated with you. And
you too, Neil. Great work
that you've done.
Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate
it.
Yes, and I do truly believe that we will get everything we want. I know we will. I don't even have a question in my head. Like, I know for a fact we're going to get everything we want done. It's going to happen because we're going to keep fighting. Because we're not going to stop fighting. There's so many of us that are so determined. It's not, there's no chance.
Every time they hurt somebody else, that's another determined person that'll join our ranks. And eventually the truth and what's right will win out. So
exactly, because it's the right thing.
I appreciate that vision. I kind of share it myself. I don't know if I get it in my lifetime, but I'm seeing enough advancements in my lifetime that I think we passed the tipping point, that there is no turning back, that it has to sort of get better from here, and it will. So a cannabis-based world is a lot of fun in my mind compared to an alcohol-based world. Not that I'm against people using alcohol. When used properly, it's great like everything else that's used properly.
See, they did themselves a disservice. If they wanted to fuck weed up like they fucked up tobacco, they should have done it like they did tobacco. But now that they made all of us into experts on pot and what good pot is, and then we grow it ourselves, and we know exactly how easy it is to, and it's actually in our hands. Like all these idiot politicians and corporations
haven't been able to put their dirty fingers on it. So it's been fantastic up till now because it's real. It's like actually there in the community, not there in some phony fucking weird bubble that they live in. And so, but now
that we can make
the two
good
communities
quality.
are coming trying to work together, and you're seeing like we're going to see a whole bunch of fake phoniness of people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about with all these companies that are the biggest weed company and the blah 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 blah. It's like, have you smoked their weed? It's fucking garbage. They're like, oh, we're the Microsoft of weed or whatever. It's like, yeah, give me some fucking, let me see how your joint burns, man. Like, and so, no, it's going to be, and all the Tokyo jokes out there and all these people who are like, oh, yeah, we're going to make it like, it's going to be the Starbucks of weed or whatever. It's like, people don't care. They just want good pot.
And they're probably going to have concentrates. They're going to be very pricey. But I know there's people that are invested in the future thinking that there's going to be a lot of the concentrates market. Vape pens are apparently going to be big coming out.
They'll probably do better at that. I think that's going to help them.
On the pricing.
I think
it's really...
if you make concentrates from shitty pot, you're still going to have shitty concentrates. Yeah. But at least it's easier to hide that, though. Right? So that's the real danger, I think, in moving forward is with all these new products coming out. Are they going to be what they say they are? And and that goes for topicals, edibles, whatever else. Like, you know, the edibles won't be much of a problem because it's only 10 milligrams per brownie or whatever. So, but I mean, how much less could they put in? Like,
right now, there's such a vibrant, amazing underground, non-legal market for shatters and concentrates and edibles and all kinds of things like that. I don't want that to have to go away. I don't think that there should be any criminal penalties for anything to do with cannabis. You know, unless you're using solvents in dangerous ways, there should be no criminal. The criminal thing shouldn't be part of the cannabis plant, and criminal code should never be in the same paragraph at the same time. They don't belong there at all.
Agreed.
One of the safest things in our environment, one of the things that helps people the most, it should be easy to access and easy to trade with amongst people, and those that want to grow should be able to grow and help others get it, and it should be easy.
It'll get there.
And they've just made it so hard at this point that it's depressing. But I still think like you. I think we're going to get there, and they can't last at what they're doing for too much longer. We'll beat them in the courts, in the court of public opinion, and people are just going to keep doing what they're doing. There's going to continue to be these good concentrate makers that are going to have outlets for getting that to the people and parties.
I
for
think
edibles.
we have a lot of U.S. states to thank for it too, and because you've seen how quickly things are moving down there. And where they actually have politicians on board who understand cannabis and understand things. And it didn't take very long. Like, how long has it been? 10 to 15 years max that these guys have had medical marijuana things. I guess maybe a little longer than that, but in some of them, like California. Yeah. But you know, these guys are now, the politicians down there are experts on weed. And so you're going to see those systems are much, much better than ours because our politicians don't have a fucking clue.
All that great yet with respect to, who gets to get a license in some of those places and how some of that stuff. And there's still a lot of going after.
Could be a lot better always, but is a lot better than what we have.
It is getting better.
And you watch, that stuff's going to spread up here because business eventually is going to win out too.
It's a big help.
And the LPs who have all this money and stuff, eventually all the government cronies who are on the levers of power controlling where things are, they're slowly going to get chipped away by lobbyists. Yeah. Chip.
I agree.
And even if we get a conservative government, it might not even be that bad of a thing on that side at least, because they'll probably just let private business do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah, if the conservatives take power in the next election, they're not going to be allowed to dismantle all of this because there's so many big players involved that are going to make sure that,
I'm not saying vote for the conservatives
I'm not either.
by any means. Like, I don't like any of them. This is the first time I don't even want to vote at all. Like, I fucking hate all of them.
I do too.
Every single one of them. I can't stand them.
I agree. I felt that way for a long time.
I don't know what I'm going to do.
Now I was lied to by Trudeau. I'm not happy with that and lots of other things.
No, I'm very disillusioned with our...
Rob Laurie made the point that the Conservatives hate the Liberals, and if they get in, maybe they'll dismantle the Liberals' weed system, but they wouldn't dismantle and make it go away. They would dismantle it in ways that maybe would make them look better in the public's eye by making the regulations better even. So maybe, who knows? I don't know what to say or how to recommend people.
Well, Harper's system was better than Trudeau's in certain ways. Of like the amount of attention they were paying to it. I mean, the system itself was obviously more people were probably being arrested before. So if less people are being arrested, that's probably a good thing.
That is a good thing.
Yeah, if we, and the fact that people can grow weed at home, and you just watch, the change itself was a good thing. The system that they set up is a piece of shit, but it's going to change.
It is.
Because the change was so monumental, it doesn't really matter about the details. Eventually, they will fall in line.
And the conversations in the real world are very positive. I mentioned that Roxanne's on shout out to Roxanne, that she's on edibles, that's why she's being a little bit silly, and it's just all, laughs and giggles, and everybody's so okay with that. And then, people I don't even expect would have anything to do with cannabis, just to comment off the cuff, and all of a sudden they're telling me about, how they're using it for this or that, and they like that CBD.
The floodgates have been opened.
They've been opened, yeah.
You can't, and once you get that, no, there's just the water's going too fast to
Cannabis
close this.
consciousness is coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
It's true.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Neil.
We'll have you back on as soon as we can.
Hell yeah.
And, I'll see you on
That was
your
my
show.
parking, so perfect
timing.
timing.
That was your parking, yeah,
It
get on
was.
that. Don't want to lose your car.
No.
Do we have a video, Neil? We have a video to go?
How you doing? You're down at the Cannabis Substitution Project in front of Vandermeer here, right? How you doing today?
I'm pretty good.
Good. How does it help you?
Well,
how's this fine?
I'm going to
plant
tell you
help
a couple things.
All right.
It's been very beneficial, and it probably got me off of heroin. I was probably, maybe 6 months down on a heroin run, and it got me off it. So the second piece is, I think
I'm just going to actually pause this for a second and just
All right.
follow my flying friend here, take a picture. I'll come right back, okay?
Yeah.
All right, hang in there. Go on, he's come with me. Tell us your story.
I got nothing to do.
Hey, this is all good. We're taking a little short walk down here. Neil's doing the picture.
There's Harley.
Harley, how you doing there, Harley?
Neighborhood. Good to see you all. I'm going to take your picture, so if you don't want to be in the picture, just don't look at the camera. Otherwise, I'd love to see your smiling faces. You all look great. It's a beautiful day out here. All right. Prosperity. Whatever that means.
Happiness abounds.
Happiness abounds. It's a good group. All right.
All
Here
right.
we go. Come on, Jerry.
All right, we're coming.
So this is our lineup today. Always a very pleasant thing here going on. Hi, John. Hi, everybody. Elizabeth.
Hey, Harley. How's it going?
Chris at the door. How you
Chris?
doing, Chris? How long have you been working the door for us?
3 years.
Well, not 3 years. We've only been here for 2.5 years. But you've been here right from the beginning, haven't you? Right from the beginning, 2.5 years. We're looking after making sure I got a parking spot and keeping things sane out here.
He's always got a warm cup of coffee as well. He shares it with me sometimes too.
Is that what's going on with that?
Yeah, I know.
Warm
He's
cup
got
of
a spike
coffee.
sometime as well too. You know, just
All
you know.
right. Come on in.
Oh, you forgot something. Okay, get your hands up. Oh God.
So this is Vandu. Of course, this is the wonderful place that's been allowing us to do this for 2.5 years. That's so good.
Yeah.
And this is our desk, and some of our sponsors are people that support us. So the medicinal cannabis dispensary is not on there, and they should be on there. But here we are again, going through the regular tour. There's our ladies putting together the packages. I'm going to take a picture of the sampling of what we have today.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Hey, Andrew, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How's it going?
Good. We're just doing an intro video here.
Yeah, we're just taking a picture of what we got today.
Let's put them in here as well.
Good package today.
Yeah, because we got these ones have quite a bit. There's 300 milligrams per package there. 3 pieces at 100 milligrams each. This one has 5 pieces at 50 milligrams each, so that's 250 milligrams. That's a lot. If anybody that's not used to it ate that much cannabis, that would probably put them to sleep for 2 or 3 days. They'd have a very uncomfortable experience. They wouldn't be happy with that. You can eat too much. There are people that can eat that much and 2 or 3 times that much, actually. But it's fairly rare. So we warn everybody not to eat too much because we are giving out in our pack is probably 500 or 600 milligrams per pack in many cases. So yeah.
Look. Explain what these are here. These are the gummies.
Yeah,
This is a new
these
set of
are
gummies
all an
here.
assortment of gummies. Not every pack has all of these. We just wanted to give a selection of the different ones we have.
Sugar free.
This is sugar free.
That's a new one.
Oh, that's a new one. That's a nice one.
Yeah, that's from Mad Hatter. They just gave us that, and some of their packages have 300 milligrams per pack as well.
That's great.
The higher dosage
This
is really
from John
needed,
Murray.
isn't it?
This is his installment this week, and this is from Ms. Medibles. This is from Dirty Dave. Dirty Dave is so awesome. Canico here.
Those are good. I tried those.
We've been very fortunate with our donators for the last while. We've been able to satisfy the line pretty well, and people are getting bags that are big enough to basically get some of them through to the next time that we're here.
And that is our goal, is to make it as easy as we can for people to transition off of the hard drugs and give them enough so that they don't have to worry about it. So that's what's going on here. This is the Holy Rollers, of course.
Yeah.
Here, as always, 2.5 years worth of coming and rolling and getting her done. People like the joints. They need the joints. The joints get them through till the edibles kick in. And so that's really awesome as well.
Yeah.
It's a great crew. So that's our report for this week. And we look forward to more reports as we go.
Hey.
Well, there we are. CSP still going strong after all these years. 2.5 years to be precise. Just we're into that last half of our third year, and there's so many people that have helped us get here. I did just a quick list of some people that helped us get to where we are with the CSP. It only happens because of the volunteers that are there making it work, and it really only happens because of those people that are able to donate to us. And without that, we wouldn't have what we have accomplished. And we've accomplished great things with the CSP. Not only have we kept this population of people healthier than they were and alive, but we've made inroads with the city of Vancouver, who has reversed the original council's decision to not allow cannabis to be dispensed in that area where Vandu is, in the East Hastings corridor. But they're now going to allow it. They've passed a motion that they will allow cannabis to be dispensed in that area, and specifically to address the opioid overdose crisis, which is very powerful. The city has the power to do that, even though dispensing of high-dose edibles and low-cost cannabis flowers and concentrates, it would not be allowed under the Cannabis Act. A city can contravene federal policy and the criminal code to address a crisis situation, and that's what's happened here, and that's what can happen in every municipality, and it should happen in every municipality. People need to have access to high-dose cannabis edibles because they work for people transitioning off of street drugs and hard drugs. The smoked cannabis is not able to be powerful enough to smoke too much of it and get the effects that those street drugs and opioids give people. But in many cases, the edible form of cannabis is enough and even more powerful than people can want. You can overdose to the point of being very uncomfortable for a day or two or three by eating too much cannabis. But it won't kill you, and you can live to not do that again quite so much. So I just want to acknowledge briefly some of the people that helped get us to where we are with the Cannabis Substitution Project. In the early days, it was the donations from Weeds, Glass and Gifts and from Carleen Corley and the Medicinal Cannabis Dispensary that allowed me to continue to be persistent in going back time after time. And eventually for that first year, it was once a week. We went there every Saturday with donations. And those three in particular were instrumental in giving us the donations that we needed to satisfy the population of people that were coming to access our services. There was also volunteers that showed up, and Ted Scully was one of the earliest ones that came along and helped make sure that things went properly, and Ryan and a few others. And when Ted had to leave because of changed his living situation, he put Andrew in his place. And Andrew has proven to be amazing in never missing and being on top of everything that happens there with respect to the volunteers and how the lineup works and all the rest of it. He's in charge of all of the volunteers and really has amazing talent and skills to be able to do the things the way that he does with the gentle demeanor that he has. So I really want to thank Andrew and Jen as well, who has been in charge of bagging up our care packs since the beginning. She's been amazing. Make sure that we take what we've got and it gets divided up properly, and it's incredible to me how often the amount of bags we have is just enough for the amount of people that we have, and the stuff that we put in those bags was a pretty equal distribution, and it's not that easy to do. And she does it on the fly because I arrived there at noon on the Sundays and Thursdays for the past year and a half now, at noon with boxes full of the donations, and hand them over to her and her little crew there, and they bag them all up and get them ready to go. So those two people in particular are instrumental in this program and have been for 2 years, maybe even a little more than that. I'm not sure exactly how long, but probably a couple of years. And there's Sarah and Larry and Blaine and Dan and Diane and Tony and Chris and Rob and Randy and Landlord and a whole bunch of other volunteers that I should be mentioning, but I'm not. I didn't try to compile a complete list. I just off the top of my head, I thought I'd write down a number of people that helped us. With respect to the donators, an incomplete list, and I'm sorry for those that I haven't included. There's a lot. But Move the Movement has been so amazing and so good with Twisted Extracts and Black Creek and Dirty Dave and Joe Pepper and John Murray, MZ Medibles, Michael the Cookie Monster, BC Bud Guys, Biomed, BC Bud Depot, The Stock Market, Culture, our anonymous gummy maker who would like to be part of the legal system but hasn't really got a shot with his high-dose edibles, but they are so effective for us, and he's been helping us for about 2 years as well, and one of the big contributors to our program. Dr. Coffee and Jerry Martin, MJ Creams, and there's a lot more when I sit down and compile a full list, but don't really have time for it at this point. I think I've touched most of the main ones that have given us repeatedly and helped us so much, although I know there are some that I've missed for sure. But that's our CSP report for this episode. There's a lot more to come on that front. There's changes being made and things behind the scenes that we'll be able to report on probably in the next show and shows coming up after that. So from here we have our coming events. And there are a few. We just had the 420 golf tournament up in Squamish, and I think we played a video of that earlier that just gave a sense of what the venue was like. It was really cool. Most of the people were out on the golf course, of course, but there was a lot of vendors set up, and they had the stage there. They had a really good band that played for the night. They served a good food dinner there. A good food dinner, that's good English. A good food dinner was had up there in Squamish. And kudos to the Cannabis Growers of Canada, and for that event. I think that's the 6th one now that they've put on, and that's pretty amazing. Maybe it's the 4th. I'm not sure. But anyway, it's a really wonderful event where you mix golfing with activism and weed and food, and yeah. So anyway, it doesn't get much better than that. But that one's said and done. What is coming up is the Karma Cup, coming up September 7th and 8th, and I know there's a pre-party on the 6th that our good friend Craig the Expert is going to be hosting, and he's got all kinds of duties all that weekend. I think he's looking after all the MC duties. He does a great job of that, and there's probably an after party after that as well. Karma Cup might still be time to get a judge's kit. It's getting really late. I think actually they were sold out, weren't they? I think they said they were sold out.
Too good. I would expect so. Try anyway. Go to the website.
Yeah, try anyway and see. And you can still go there and buy just a general admission ticket. There's thousands of people that go there. There's all the top vendors will be there, I'm sure. And a good time will be had by all. Sarah does an amazing job of working her little tail off and getting that cup pulled together. And that's the one that I think is 6 years maybe. I think it's the 420 is 4 and the Karma Cup is 6. But yeah. Anyway, Cheech and Chong are heading out on a tour across Canada from Ontario, September 22nd. I love those guys, proving that a lifetime of drug misuse can still result in a functioning human being at over the age of 80. So good on them for proving that. Calgary Hemp Fest, October 11th. Anything put on by those people is probably great. I have some good friends in Alberta that are passionate advocates, and I'd like to see what they do there. So Hempfest on October 11th coming up, and the Prairie Harvest Medicinal Cup November 8th, 9th, and 10th out there in Saskatoon. That's the Friendly Cup, and a little bit cold probably, but I shouldn't knock that too hard. I'm just
Prairie Harvest.
Yeah, well,
Friendliest Cup, but that's not the name.
Well, the Prairie Harvest, the Prairie Harvest Medicinal Cup. Didn't I say that?
No.
I thought I started.
The Friendly Cup. It's the friendliest cup.
They could just call it the Friendly Cup. Maybe they could.
Maybe
they could rename it the Friendly Cup.
Well, anyone looking for it won't rename it.
No, you won't find it under the Friendly Cup. Although you never know. There's probably been enough comments about how friendly it is that it might even come up on a Google search. Friendly Cannabis Cup. We should try that and see. Probably work. But if not now, soon, because it's always very friendly there, and they put on a great show. They've got a lot of top vendors from across Canada that show up there. They're kind of central to a lot of different things. And it's in wonderful little Saskatoon, where the food is great, That's for sure. And check them out and support them. And that's about it. We have on Monday the 420 Lifestyle with Carly Marley and BC Bud Gal. I'll be back next Tuesday with a little more of THC with Neil, and we'll tell you some more truths and give you some hope and ways to change. On Wednesday, From Under the Influence with Greg Williams and his crew. Friday, it's Jeremiah, who we were happy enough to have on our show today. He was great. He has had his finger not only on the pulse, but creating that heartbeat for a very long time here at Cannabis Culture with all the things that he's been involved with. And he's got his show, Cannabis Culture News Live, on Fridays. At high noon on Saturday, it's Boss Lissa and her revolving guests and hosts. And that's kind of it. It's a wrap. I want to thank my guests. I want to thank Neil. I'm so happy to have Neil. This show wouldn't happen without him, I'm pretty sure, because he's given me the guidance to be able to get over the hurdles that are there for someone trying to do what we're trying to do here. Jeremiah Vandermeer, not just for being a guest, but for all his hard work and what he's going to do in the future. I can't wait to see that. And for Glenn Wells and Landlord for our 420 session, for Jerry Martin for coming in, for the guests we had in studio that give me some support, and everybody else who watched, thank you so much. Go in peace and have as much fun as you can changing the world.